They say birthdays mark the passing of time, a celebration of life. But on my 68th birthday, what I received wasn't a gift. It was a warning. My name is Frank Dalton, and this is the story of how a simple package on my doorstep unraveled everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the son I once believed I could trust. It was morning. Sunlight cutting through the blinds, coffee cooling on the table. That's when I saw it. A package, plain, square, with no card, no sender's name, just one short, cold message scrawled across the envelope. Happy birthday. The handwriting froze me. I'd know it anywhere. It was Ethan's, my son. 3 years since we'd spoken. 3 years since he walked out of my life. No calls, no apologies, no explanations. And now, on my birthday, his handwriting sat on my kitchen table. Inside was a bottle of whiskey. Not just any bottle. This one was rare, a collector's prize. Green label, glowing gold under the light, sealed in wax like treasure. But Ethan knew better. He was there the day the doctor told me, quit drinking, or you won't see 70. He sat by my hospital bed when my chest still burned from the heart attack. So why whiskey? Why now? I didn't open it. Couldn't. Instead, I slid it aside, letting the morning light shine against the glass. If anyone deserved something fine, it was Robert Carson, my son-in-law's father. Robert was the kind of man who showed up before you asked. 2 summers ago, when a storm ripped half the shingles off my roof, Robert was on my ladder with a hammer before I'd even brewed my first coffee. So that afternoon, I buckled the bottle into the passenger seat of my old Chevy and drove it to his house. When he opened the door in his red flannel shirt, boots dusted with sawdust, his eyebrows lifted. "Frank, what's this?" "From Ethan. Figured you'd enjoy it more than I would." He studied the label, eyes wide, then smiled. "This is something special." "Thank you." I drove home lighter, telling myself not everything had to have meaning. But deep down, I knew Ethan's choices always had meaning. And this gift, it was too sharp to be simple. That night dinner was pot roast and carrots, the kind of meal that begs for company. But I was alone. When the landline rang, I nearly jumped. "Hello, Dad." Ethan's voice, smooth, casual, like 3 years hadn't passed. "You got my gift?" "I did." "Well, what'd you think?" "It's a nice bottle. You try it yet?" His tone sharpened, just slightly. "No," I said. "I gave it to Robert Carson. Thought he'd enjoy it more than I would." Silence. Long. Heavy. Deliberate. "You gave it to Robert?" His voice colder now. "That's right." A long exhale. Then the line went dead. I set the receiver down. My stomach twisted. He hadn't asked about me, my health, my birthday. He only asked about the bottle. And it mattered to him. Too much. The next morning the phone rang again. Linda, Robert's wife. Her voice cracked. "Frank, Robert's in the hospital. He collapsed this morning. They think it might be some kind of poisoning." The mug slipped from my hand. "Poisoning?" She explained. They'd shared 1 glass with dinner. By morning, Robert couldn't stand. And suddenly, the empty spot on my counter where the whiskey had been felt like a hole opening under my feet. Later, at the bottom of my trash bin, I found it. A small white vial, powder clinging inside. And in my fridge, a mason jar, half filled with leftover whiskey. My hands shook as I pulled it out. There was only one man I could call, Gary, my old army buddy, now running a veterinary lab. Gary, I need this tested, quietly. That evening, I drove the jar to him. He met me in the lot, lab coat over his sweatshirt, eyes dead serious. "This isn't right, Frank," he said. "Whiskey shouldn't leave haze like this. I'll run tests." By the next afternoon, his voice on the phone carried the weight of a verdict. "Frank, it's laced. White snake root. Enough to shut down the heart, slowly, quietly." I closed my eyes. Robert had drunk it, but I hadn't. Gary's words echoed. "You might have just dodged a bullet, but I knew the truth. That bullet had been meant for me." At the hospital, Robert looked pale, hollow, his chest rising with stubborn rhythm against the machines. Linda's hands clasped the bed rail like it was the only thing keeping her upright. She whispered, "We both had one glass. He said it was the nicest whiskey he'd ever tasted." My jaw tightened. It was new, unopened. I still have a sample from the same bottle. Tell the doctors. Back home, I checked my trash. The vial was gone. Someone had been inside. Someone who wanted the evidence erased. I called Gary. "The vial's missing." "Frank," he said, "you need the police. Now." And for the first time in my life, I believed him. I drove to Ethan's house, neutral siding, perfect lawn, a truck newer than mine parked outside. When he opened the door, his face flashed surprise, then calculation, then a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, unexpected." Inside, the air smelled of lemon cleaner. On the counter, 3 unopened bottles, none like the one he'd sent me. I stepped closer. Robert liked it. Said his favorite pour was from the middle shelf, the single malt. He froze. Just for a second. I hadn't told him where it was stored. He smirked, covered with a laugh. "You must have. You get chatty when you're sentimental." "I didn't," I said flat. His smile faltered. "I'm going to ask you one question. Did you tamper with that whiskey?" Silence. The fridge hummed. A car rolled past. The clock ticked. He didn't answer. And in that silence, I heard the truth. The next day, I met Detective Reyes, sharp-eyed, calm. I laid it all out. Dates, details, the recorder, the mason jar. He nodded, heavy. "This doesn't become a case because you feel it. It becomes a case when it survives other people looking at it. We'll look." Then he warned me. "Don't talk to your son again. Note his calls. Keep your answers shorter than his questions." And for the first time, I felt the weight shift. Someone else was carrying a piece of it. Days later, Reyes called. We found it. In Ethan's garage, mason jars labeled with masking tape, WSR, rootstock, tincture, notes on preparation, dosage, and a letter addressed to me. Inside, my name, and a drawing of a tree with its roots circled. No words, just a message. Reyes didn't sugarcoat it. We're moving from suspicion to evidence. That changes everything.
That night, I found a note jammed in my back door. Black marker, thick letters. Stop letting them in, or I will. No signature. But I knew whose hand had written it. When they finally brought Ethan in, he lawyered up, but the evidence stacked high. Emails about toxin dosages, searches on lethal levels in adults over 60, a notebook with initials, R.C., Robert Carson, F.D., my initials. Next to mine, not a test dose, not a warning, a lethal number. Reyes met my eyes. You weren't just a bystander, Frank. You were a target. Your son hadn't just poisoned Robert. He had planned to kill me. Ethan's lawyer came with an offer, a deal. Reduced charges, no attempted murder, just mishandling. But I'd seen the notebook, seen my initials. That wasn't mishandling. That was intent. Reyes asked me, "Do you want this to go to trial?" I thought of Robert in that hospital bed, of Linda's trembling hands, of the boy Ethan used to be, feeding ducks with me at the park, asking if names on plaques meant the mission was finished. And I realized maybe this was my mission, not to protect my son anymore, but to stop him.
I told Reyes, steady, full charges, I'll testify. Because sometimes the hardest thing a father can do isn't protecting his son. It's protecting the world from him. That bottle on my doorstep wasn't a gift. It was a death sentence, wrapped in wax and gold. And the man who sent it was my own son.